Growing up, I had Honey, I Shrunk the Kids on VHS and watched it so many times. It's the reason why I love and hate scorpions. Rest in peace, Auntie. But every time I watched the movie, there was a little part before the movie and after the previews with a cartoon short called Tummy Trouble. In it, Roger is tasked by the mom to watch over a baby who ends up swallowing a rattle. Hilarity and physical cartoon humor ensues. It ends by showing Roger and the baby are actually on set with real people, and the baby straight up as a grown man. I was always fascinated by that and just thought it was an actual character who does have cartoons, a cartoon history, and everything. Think Bugs Bunny or Mickey Mouse. Little did I know. Nope, none of that is true.
It's totally made up.
And this character of Roger Rabbit has a much different past than I first thought. He isn't a character that has any history in animation, like I initially thought as a kid. No, he's actually a character created for a novel called Who Censored Roger Rabbit by Gary K. Wolfe, a mystery novel in 1981. This story is a hard-boiled detective noir story with a character who is a comic strip character. Gary K. Wolfe actually got inspired to write this story by his childhood reading comics and sci-fi, and his father, who read true crime magazines. He was always fascinated by noir mysteries and knew he wanted to blend those two universes together, but he didn't know how. Then, one fateful Saturday morning, he was watching cartoon cereal commercials, and he had an epiphany. The cartoons were talking to real people in the real world, and the kids and adults didn't think it was weird. That's the world Gary went to go and write. Before the book was even released to the public, it was already circulating around Hollywood, with the Disney company being very interested, with even Roy Disney reaching out to Gary saying, "I just read your novel, and I was wondering if you'd be interested in having Disney make it into a movie." Gary blew it off thinking it was one of his friends pulling his leg, but it turns out someone at his publishing company sent a copy of the manuscript to Disney, which made its way up the chain all the way to Roy, who quoted as saying, "This is the movie we have to make." Past that, the movie has a very long history of being developed by Disney Animation, with them running live action mixed with hand-drawn tests, and I'll be honest, I think what they were able to do in these tests looks like magic, and really reminds me why we love movies. It's a magic trick. The design of Roger went through many different versions as well, and it's crazy to see how their design changed for almost 10 years. I have to give so much credit here to the YouTube creator Yesterworld Entertainment, who made a fantastic feature-length documentary on YouTube. The information on this video and me watching it, while sick, really inspired me to take a look at my own experience with this movie and its impact on my life as well as the crazy story behind the creation of the movie. Links to his channel and video are down below, and big thanks to him for making it. Even more trials and tribulations happened behind the scenes, until finally, the ball started to really move. with the involvement of Robert Zemeckis, hot off of Back to the Future fame, and Steven Spielberg. Who is freaking Steven Spielberg? And finally, the movie was released in 1988. Now, I was born a year later, but little did I know how culturally relevant this movie was going to be for the next decade of my life. Now, let's talk about the movie. Watching this recently, I'm completely transported back to the time that this movie was filmed. The sets, the gags, tone, and graphics are truly fantastic. The movie, starting with the straight-up animated short, is an amazing way to introduce us to the world and to the characters. With the movie then transitioning to live action with the character Baby Herman acting like a 40-year-old tough gruff guy. We see the Toon, Roger Rabbit, interacting with real-life live-action set pieces and props. The camera pans to Eddie Valiant, the hard-boiled private detective of this story. It's Hollywood, 1947, and Toons are a normal part of life. A place called Toontown being introduced here in the intro, though Valiant does not want to or can't go back there. Valiant calls his price at $100, and we see even more real-life mix with hand-drawn gags here with a jump scare. It's Dumbo from Disney, introducing that we are going to see almost everyone we can think of in this film. We then see more gags and cameos from a bunch of characters while walking through the studio. We're then introduced to the Red Line. Valiant mentions how they have the best public transit system in the world. And it's really funny to look into the red cars of LA and how there is, actually, something called the General Motors streetcar conspiracy. That really seems extremely fascinating to me and makes a whole lot of sense why we have to drive in LA now. Not saying it's real, just saying maybe it's something to look into. Anyways, this is every day for these characters. While there is hostility with Valiant about not working with Toons, we find out it's because Toons killed his brother, which explains his hesitancy and hostility with them. All until Jessica comes into play, which is Valiant's target. He's to spy on her and see if he can find anything, and he does. I must say, this movie is so freaking risque, and honestly shocking. The patty cake part in particular here is hilarious. We all think it's something, and it turns out to be legit just patty cake. I'm dead. I love the gag too where Roger is flipping the pictures so fast that they actually look animated. Amazing touches. The amount of detail in every shot is absolutely insane. And I must say, Bob Hoskins is a terrific choice for a lead actor here. He's not pretty enough to seem fake or Hollywood, and his gruff voice is the perfect juxtaposition against all the lunacy of the Toons. But he's able to have vulnerable parts too, really selling his relationship with Dolores, and that his brother's death really did have a hard impact on him. This also showed that he had a goofy side as well, and wasn't always this tough, rough man we have before us. The hand-drawn animation with the layer of processing on top still really holds up as well. It's amazing to see what the teams were able to do with the technology of the time. My love for this movie really comes from all the physical props and sets they had to make. I really love all the cartoon items that are in the real world and that the humans are interacting with. Keep this in mind where my personal story goes with this. But the idea that this was a possibility really gives a sense of whimsy, fantasy, and wonder. Which, to me, is really that Disney brand. Again, this story is very risque for now, in my opinion. I'm curious how parents would react to the content in it nowadays. The movie still holds up greatly to me, in my opinion, with Bob Hoskins really being the acting MVP, really selling that Roger is in the room with him, Christopher Lloyd as Judge Doom does another great job, selling me even more on his villain run, with me as a kid legit being scared of him when he reveals his cartoon self later in the movie. It's such a fantastic movie that I really do wish more people nowadays were talking about it, as I consider it one of the classics that really should be held side by side with Spielberg and Zemeckis' other films of the same era. The 80s were a truly crazy time for media and just might be my favorite. Hence this series. Anyways, the movie came out and was Disney's biggest opening weekend ever at the time of release. It went on to gross $152,112,492 in the US and Canada, with $197,387,508 internationally, bringing it to a grand total at box office of $351,500,000. At the time of release, it was the 20th highest grossing film of all time. The Good Times rolled on VHS home video market as well, being released on that platform in October of 1989. The movie released to near universal critical acclaim, also making Business Insider's best comedies of all time list. Rotten Tomatoes now holds the film at a 96% based off of 76 reviews, with Roger Ebert at the time giving it 4 out of 4 stars, calling it sheer enchanted entertainment from the first frame to the last. A joyous, giddy, goofy celebration of the kind of fun you can have with a movie camera. This movie has been considered to be the rekindling of the golden age of animation, which then leads to the silver age of animation post this movie release. It is also the start of the Disney Renaissance, which I was lucky enough to live my formative years through. Which leads me to the opening of Toontown in Disneyland.
At Disneyland, you've seen Fantasyland, Frontierland, and Tomorrowland. Now here's a whole new land you've never seen before. Hey! Let me show you around. Take this crazy town.
I was very lucky to live in this time and to live close to Disneyland. I lived in the time of new rides and areas and have the ticket prices be reasonable enough to go, around $30 for a one-day ticket, which is about $50 in today's economy. With at one point, a one-day ticket would have been $22 in 1993, since attendance was so low at the time. I know, who could believe it nowadays? Also, annual passes started in the later 80s, starting around $200 in today's money, this of which my mother would buy around this time. We went to Disneyland a lot because she was collecting these 40 Years of Adventures cards, which were given out every day in 1994. And we continued to go to the park in 1995 with the opening of the Indiana Jones ride, which is significantly nerfed nowadays, by the way. But what I had at this time, with the renaissance of Disney, was a lot of Disney cartoons and shows early in the morning on KCAL 9. While I was home, I watched so many classics, and then they were intermixed with ads for Toontown and Disneyland, just opening its doors in January of 1993. I loved this area of the park, being able to interact with actual cartoon props and imagining the residents of this town and the gags that happened, including trying to lift the weight that smashed into the ground. It is truly remarkable to be standing in their houses, touch their phones, interacting with something that otherwise you are not able to because they don't exist. But in this world, they do exist. And when you meet the characters as a kid, it makes it even more real. Like a kid saying, "Hey, I stopped by your house, but you must have been out," or something. A part of this land is the ride, Roger Rabbit's Cartoon Spin, which is an amazing dark ride and one of my favorites growing up because of being able to spin the car, which my parents hated. But another great part was the transition from it being in Toontown, where again, these characters exist, to the ride, which the line also sells you on the same aesthetic as the rest of Toontown, The props, the sets, and the characters are all in front of you. Radio broadcasts, aesthetics, settings. I believe in 2021, the ride was updated to have Jessica Rabbit sort of looking like a Dick Tracy in a yellow trench coat, being a detective to solving a mystery. I love that they're making new additions to this ride and think it may be the best dark ride that they have at the park. At least, it's my favorite. This movie and experience is truly the reason why I do love these Golden Age cartoons and have such a fondness for them, versus cartoons that came out a little later on Cartoon Network or something, even the 80s cartoons. Don't get me wrong, Transformers is legit, but there is something about these original cartoons, their physical gags and characters, that is a sense of innocence and wonder that being a kid should all be about. Even in the 90s, Spielberg would produce shows that hit the same chord with me with WB, such as the series Freakazoid, Animaniacs, and Pinky and the Brain. All of these, plus Batman the Animated Series, kind of played off the Golden Age and the 1940s. There's something just so sincere about that time, and I don't know if it's because a loss of innocence with 9/11, or the culture of the country and the world as a whole. Our fascination with phones, screens, and social media. But this era, it was in the moment, it was in the now of that time. And again, sincere. The culture of the country as a whole currently, the freedom of information flowing in the internet, the dark stories that live all across the globe. I know, I'm almost 40, and looking back at the good old days. But there is something about this movie and characters, the creation of it, that is truly wonderful, remarkable, wondrous, hilarious, and really an amazing magic trick that should be experienced if you haven't before. This movie was the inspiration for many other titles down the line as well, one of the largest being Space Jam. Oh yeah, Space Jam. That movie's legit too. But I still have more of a fondness for Roger Rabbit, even though Space Jam was in my movie rotation as a kid as well when it came out to VHS. There's something about the old Hollywood, the Golden Age cartoons, the detective noir, the actors, the sets, and everything that the other titles really don't have. Again, if you haven't seen it, please do, and let me know down in the comments below your experience with it. Again, if you're interested, please check out Yesterworld Entertainment down in the description below. If you liked the video, feel free to subscribe for more. Be sure to Red Hulk smash that like button, and let's have a conversation down below in the comments. Thank you so much, and have a great day.